So today I want to show you how to do a duplicate stitch on the front of some stockinette knitting. As you probably already know, when the knitted stitches are on the front of a piece, that's the stockinette stitch because it's all purled on the back side. There are several reasons to do duplicate stitch, and one of them is to add detail to a plain background. Another is to use that method when hiding your yarn tails. And that can be done on either stockinette or what we would call reverse stockinette if this were the public side of your knitting. Today, my focus is on using using duplicate stitch to add detail, say for putting maybe a pattern on something, if you were going to add initials to something to personalize it, or a picture, or something graphic like circles or flowers or a building or something in that form. Because the duplicate stitch is meant to duplicate the stitch that already exists, we just need to identify what the stitch is that we want to duplicate. And in this case, it would be a knit stitch, which looks like a V. You can see the V right here. And we're going to use a tapestry needle. I like the ones that have a little bend on the end. Some people use straight ones. And for smaller yarn, of course, this would be appropriate for maybe a lace weight or fingering weight yarn. I like these big ones for the weight of yarn I'm using today, which is worsted weight. It's always easier to begin at the bottom of the pattern that you want to create, or the letter or the picture, and work your way up the stitches than it is to start at the top and come down. So I'm just going to create a straight line right now, and by finding this particular stitch, I will use that as my starting point. So I'm going to draw my needle through the bottom of that stitch, leaving a little tail that I'll weave in later. This stitch goes up underneath the two legs of the stitch above, so that's the way I'm following it with my yarn. Drawing my yarn through, it's important to be careful with your gauge or with your tension here. You want the tension of the stitch that you're applying to equal the tension of the stitch that you're duplicating, so that you get good coverage of the stitch underneath. Now I just go right back through the place where I began, pull my yarn through, and you can see I gave a little unintentional pull to the yarn tail, which drew this too tight, so I can adjust that tension very easily. And there I have a V that has duplicated the stitch underneath it. I'm going to keep going up this row, and you can see the stitch above is a V, and it begins right there. So that is where I want to begin with my tapestry needle for the next duplicate stitch. Pull that through, follow the yarn up under the two legs of the stitch above it, draw that through gently, and go right back in the place I began, trying to match the tension of the stitch I'm duplicating. Once more, I will go to the stitch above, which originates right there. That's where I will begin my duplicate stitch. Pull that through, not too tight, not too loose, and then follow that stitch as it goes up and under both legs of the stitch above. Can you see that? Draw that through. You can always touch it up a little with your fingertips, and then back right where we began. There we have a nice little straight line of duplicate stitches, and just like anything else, we can keep going, we can change colors, we can create different patterns to add some interest to our knitting. One last stitch going up under the two legs above, drawing that through and going right back where we began. Okay, there you have it. That's your duplicate stitch in a row. I could make that into the letter T or the letter L or into a box. But I hope that explains to you how to do the duplicate stitch, how easy it is, and of course you'll tuck in your yarn tails later. Thank you.